Here's an interesting development. It's weird, right? Because everybody knows the Beatles, okay? How much you know about the story of the Beatles, how they went from, just the mop-top crew who were setting up for, 40-some-odd consecutive nights down there in Germany to becoming one of the most recognizable rock, one of the most influential music groups of all time. There are stories to tell, okay? And the fact that Sam Mendes, who actually directed that film that's right behind me, and then also this follow-up Spectre. We don't need to talk about that one, but they got somebody with pedigree directing not one, not two, but 4 separate Beatles films on Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. I think we can kind of figure out which ones are ultimately going to end up grossing in descending order. But the release schedule on this it's very interesting. I find the release and I find the method that this story is being told far more interesting than the Beatles themselves. Because I respect the Beatles, okay? But then at the same time, I also realize that everybody gives them their flowers for the second half of their career. But then at the same time, before they discovered drugs and, went on a pilgrimage to meet with the Hare Krishna, okay? They were out there going, I wanna hold you, all that insufferable British invasion shit, okay? I'll stick with the Stones, okay? But that triumvirate of the original British invasion of the Stones, the Beatles, and the Who, I put the Beatles in a firm third, okay? Ain't shit compared to Mick and Keith and Roger and Peter, okay? Love the Who. The Who's great. But John, Paul, George, and Ringo will each be the subject of a different upcoming feature film. Director Sam Mendes plans to make 4 separate movies, one from each Beatles member's point of view. They will intersect to tell the astonishing story of the greatest band in history. Citations needed. Leading up to their 1970 breakup, according to the press release, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and their family, and the families of the late John Lennon and George Harrison, have granted full life story and music rights for the scripted films. Interesting. I'm honored to be telling the story of the greatest rock band of all time and excited to challenge the notion of what constitutes a trip to the movies. Mendes, Oscar-nominated filmmaker for American Beauty, War Drama 1917, and Bond films Skyfall and Spectre, Sony Pictures Entertainment. Oh, it's a Sony. Okay, going in a different non-webbing field. Oh my God. Okay, you're leaving the madam in the dust to go ahead and talk about the boys from Britain? Come on, man. We'll finance and distribute all 4 films theatrically in 2027. So we're still a ways off on that one, but all 4 films are going to drop in 2027. That's interesting. Okay. Details about the release plans will be shared later, but the studio promises the strategy will be more innovative and groundbreaking. Yeah, okay, because you'd think, right? If they're going to be telling the same story from a different perspective, okay, that's going to be 8 hours, at least 8 hours, probably pushing 10 and change. And if they're dropped throughout the year, you're spending a lot of money on that. What are you going to have to do? Drop the George Harrison, or I'm sorry, not the George Harrison one. That's the one that you probably go second on. You go John first, or do you go Paul first? You probably go John first, and then you go George, and then you sandwich Ringo in right before you wrap it all up with John. Is that the way that you would do it? Okay. Because if you lead with Ringo and it's who's actually going to give a shit? But this is all premised on that there's a good story to tell, that you can keep people's attention throughout the year. That's what makes this so interesting. It would certainly be risky to premiere all 4 films in the same year. However, music movies have been surging in popularity at the box office. Yeah, Baz Luhrmann's Elvis and Paramount's Bob Marley, One Love were bigger hits than expected. I don't really know that an Elvis biopic would be bigger than expected, but the Bob Marley one, definitely did well, and it wasn't that long ago when Ray was winning Oscars, and, so was Walk the Line. Both of those are great. And even still, Bohemian Rhapsody, as goofy as it was, and Rocket Man, they still turned a profit, so I think that this is something, shocking. And then also the source material that you're working with, it seems like a slam dunk. It's just the way that you're going about it. It's interesting. I'm not going to condemn it. I just quite an experiment that you have right here, but also kind of signals something else. Several other looks at musical legends are in the works. Yeah, I've seen this one, and it's be interesting, man. Antoine Fuqua, he's working on the Michael Jackson biopic. Ooh, Amy Winehouse is getting a biopic treatment. With Back to Black. Ridley Scott is in talks to direct a movie about the rise of the Bee Gees. He's gonna have him play metal because fuck you. It doesn't really much matter about being being historically accurate. Okay, Ridley, you should probably just go retire anyways. In addition to directing, Mendes will produce alongside Neil Street Productions partner Pippa Harris and Neil Street's Julie Pastor. Jeff Jones will executive produce from Apple Corp Limited, yes, the multimedia organization founded by the Beatles in 1968, which was at least purchased by the estate of Michael Jackson, and now Sony owns all of that stuff because I hate Sony. We intend this to be uniquely thrilling and epic cinematic experience. 4 films told from 4 different perspectives, which tell a singular story about the most celebrated band of all time. That's more accurate. To have the Beatles and Apple Corp's blessing to do this is an immense privilege. So yeah, they're going to be able to use all the music. They aren't going to have to pussyfoot around this or re-record any of it, that's definitely a boon. The first time the Beatles have granted their full support for a scripted film. The band, yes, has been the subject of several documentaries, including the 70s film Let It Be, which chronicled the group's breakup, as well as Peter Jackson's Get Back. How do I not even remember that? Okay, which captured the making of their album Let It Be. Their songs have also inspired films like 2007 Jukebox Musical, Across the Universe. Yeah, that was pretty big. And 78 Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Despite their global following, not everything from the Beatles touches turns to cinematic gold. Across the Universe flopped, for instance. I remember getting marketed to hell and back, but maybe I wasn't paying attention to the box office, which is, yeah, man, it's very interesting and uniquely pointed out by Vanity Fair. Very strange, okay? The 4 Beatles films prove the future of movies is the limited series. It's so strange because you had David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, lament the death of the premier television show. And now we're starting to see Hollywood, in its death throes, adopt the model of premium television in order to bring it to the silver screen. I find it interesting that they're going to go out there with this experiment. There are very few things that you can actually do. Hell, it might be a unique experience, or it might be a unique way for Disney to try to drum up any sort of excitement for certain superhero team-up films. Like, I know that they're working on a bunch of different teams in the background. The Young Avengers, Midnight Suns. Hell, even trying to figure out what the hell you're doing with the actual Avengers themselves. But with the Fantastic Four film that's in the works right now, okay, if that ends up being a big hit, if that ends up being the second coming of Iron Man 1, okay, do you run that back and tell that story from the perspective of the Human Torch, the Invisible Woman, the Thing, Mr. Fantastic? It's an interesting idea, okay? In a gamble so crazy it just might work, director Sam Mendes has teamed up with 2 living Beatles for a truly ambitious project. 4 different movies, each from the perspective of a different different member of the band, all slated for release in 2027. I'm honored to be telling the story of the greatest rock band of all time, blah, blah, blah. We already went through that. Each film will be told from the point of view of a different band member and will eventually intersect to tell the astonishing story of the greatest band in history. And I'm tired of that little, ad up there in the corner. That's what was throwing me off. Apologies. The dating cadence of the films, the details which will be shared closer to release, will be innovative and groundbreaking. It's really true that you couldn't tell the story of the Beatles in a single feature film. You'd just be leaving a lot on the cutting room floor, but you could have told it in a premium television show HBO project, an AMC project, dedicating a specific season, 8, 10, 12 episode season for George, Paul, Ringo, and John. Like, you could have done it that way. This is so strange, just trying to shotgun all of these different stories, these 2.5, 3-hour stories throughout the year. I think it's cool, and this is the first time that we've seen genuine innovation in Hollywood for quite a long time. But this is undeniably a big swing, an upfront commitment to 4 feature films. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, much as I like Skyfall, I also understand that Spectre is out there. And yeah, he has favor. And, a lot of late reappraisal of American Beauty being a good film, because I remember that thing being divisive as hell when it first came out. But okay, you have to hope that your central premise for this story, all of these different threads that you're hoping to combine by telling the story from 4 different perspectives, you gotta hope that these films are good. Yeah, this is a huge gamble because, okay, like if you're telling this in an episodic format, the seasonal delivery mechanism, you can go ahead and, see what works with the audience and change it throughout the seasons. But this is 4 feature films, 1 year set right now, 3 years out. Bold. The commitment, oddly enough, feels like a vote of confidence in Kevin Costner's gamble for this summer. 2-part original Western that Warner Brothers will release in theaters on June 28th and August 16th. Okay, but it could also be a sign where the movie industry is headed in general away from tangled cinematic universes, which is kind of strange to say in light of this revelation where you have cinematic universe? No, you just have a musical universe that you're trying to bring across the universe you're trying to bring together. Okay, that have worn us all out. Yes, why have they worn you out? Because they're poorly made. Yes, single stories told in multiple installments have been around for as long as there's been Hollywood. But making 4 Beatles movies at the same time is not so different from committing to 3 Lord of the Rings films. Yes, back in the late 1990s, and for as many times as that has been tried to be replicated, Hobbit. How many success stories do we have? You're pointing out the exception. It's a great exception. It's the best trilogy ever. Nothing's ever going to touch that. We've seen it tried time and time again. It's the Lord of the Rings and everything else. But that was a gamble. It was a huge gamble, and it paid off there. It's going to be the same for the Beatles? Don't know. It's not hard to imagine while films executives look enviously at what HBO has with White Lotus or Netflix with The Queen's Gambit. Take your word for it. I have no idea what those words mean. Stories that captivate people for hours upon hours and inspire them to keep coming back for more. Couldn't you go with like HBO and House of the Dragon? Please be good. Even though 8 episodes for the 2nd season. What the fuck? It better be good. Anyways, that means paying to come back for more. Front commitment for multiple feature films is a risk that doesn't pay off, as Universal attempted Exorcist franchise reboot has proven. Yes, if we learned anything in the weeks of discussion around Peter Jackson's Get Back documentary from 2021, the Beatles still hold a unique fascination. Exactly, and well, I bought their catalog. I've got my box set that's actually up there. It's a stereo box set because, well, they pioneered stereo sound. Okay, you could have got the mono box set, but just, go to hell, you bunch of hipsters. But you can also thank the Beatles for hipsters, which is another reason why I've got to keep my appreciation for them at arm's length. They're probably the most popular band in history even still. So yeah, you're going to have that built-in audience, but you better not piss them off rip. So this is going to be an interesting one to follow here for the next 3 years. And if this experiment works, I don't know where it goes from here, but there's a lot of different stories that you can tell, not just within the music world, but across different mediums. And well, this could be the kick in the ass that the Hollywood industry desperately needs right now, and could be the start of a very cool trend. Or it could be just running back the same story multiple times in order to just try to bilk you for your money in the same way that remakes, remasters continue to do across different platforms. But we'll have to see the closer that we get. But it seems like it's in the right hands, but only time will tell. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.